When Sonic Mania was first revealed to the world, everybody, including this dork right here, was absolutely blown away. However, my dad's friend Colonel was skeptical it'd be as good as it looked, seeing as how the last time Sega tried to hype Sonic's return to 2D with Sonic the Hedgehog 4, it turned out even more disappointing than my Little League Soccer performance last week. But then after I finally got my theoretical hands on a digital copy, it didn't take very long to convince me that this is the best 2D Sonic game ever made. But now that physical copies of Sonic Mania Plus are available and the game's not as fresh in my ass due to some time passing since its initial release, it's time to be subjective and give Sonic 3 and Knuckles a fair shot to defend its title of the best 2D Sonic game ever made. So sit back, relax, grab a cold one, kick your feet back, order a pizza, discipline your fathers, click the subscribe button if you haven't already, and let's begin tonight's main event of Sonic 3 and Knuckles vs. Sonic Mania Plus. So before we even bring Sonic Mania Plus into the conversation, I should probably address the people who don't even think Sonic 3 and Knuckles is the best 2D game to begin with. So without talking too much poop on the other 2D games, let me tell you why Sonic 3 and Knuckles was at least the best in the series before Sonic Mania's cute little ass came along during a title shot. The original Sonic the Hedgehog was a great first game in the franchise, but unlike movies, video games usually get better with sequels, at least before they evolve into different things entirely. Sonic 1 was missing the spin dash, not being invulnerable to spikes after taking damage, and overall slow gameplay compared to its sequels. So I think anybody without nostalgia plugging their booty holes can admit that the original Sonic the Hedgehog wasn't the best. Sonic CD was the true sequel to the first game, made by the same Japanese developers as opposed to the US developers who made 2. I know this is a lot of people's favorite Sonic game, and that those people are probably gonna tear me a new peephole in the comments for this, but to be honest, I could just never fully get into this game. Maybe it's because I suck expired eggs, but I think the past and future gameplay is a bit too complicated for something as simple as a 2D platformer. Don't get me wrong, I understand how it works. I just want Sonic to be simplistic. And even though I do enjoy the game overall, I can't say it's the best game in the 2D series. There was also a poopload of amazing handheld 2D Sonic games that were overlooked, and I'd recommend not only Sonic fans to check them out, but I'd go an ass hair further and say that they're decent games for newcomers to the series with the exception of the 3DS titles, which suck ass. However, as great as the handheld Sonics are, not one of them can be considered the best, cause to keep this video as brief as possible, none of them had enough serious effort put into them to make them feel like main series games. And as I've already mentioned earlier, both episodes of Sonic the Hedgehog 4 were just nostalgic cash grabs, not worthy of the number 4 being added in the title. So that brings us to the last 2D game in the series I haven't talked about that would probably be voted as everybody's favorite by the general public, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. This game basically gave the first Sonic the Hedgehog a pound of my neighbor Terry's meth by adding the spin dash and even allowing you to outrun the screen. And not only that, but Sonic the Hedgehog 2 also had the grapefruits to rip Super Saiyans off shortly after they became popular with the inclusion of Super Sonic. But now we're getting off track and it doesn't matter anyway because Super Sonic is in fact awesome. In addition to the gameplay improvements, Sonic 2 also started the series' never-ending character expansion by adding Tails, who has a realistic human named Miles Prower for some reason.
Yeah, Miles. I mean, it's terrific, right?
However, even though Sonic 2 is often remembered as the best game in the series, I really can't agree with that. In fact, I honestly like some of the handheld games better, but Sonic the Hedgehog 2 seems to get the most praise, and the reason why I think that is because it's the game that the majority of people, including myself, remember playing the most back during Sega's prime in the console race. I mean, even I would have told you it was the best before I replayed Sonic 3 and Knuckles. And as I've said in a few videos before, I loved playing Sonic the Hedgehog 2 so much that I actually pooped on the ground to avoid going to the bathroom. I don't remember consciously doing it, but there was poop on the ground behind me, so unless it was the poop fairy, it must have happened, but as we all learned at the age of 16, the poop fairy's not even real. The reason I think Sonic 3 is better though is because it just brought way more to the table and improved upon a lot of 2's shortcomings. It added a much needed save feature so you didn't have to feel like a dingus when you turned the game off and lost all your Chaos Emeralds. Plus, Sonic 2's bonus stages could eat Blue Spheres' butthole. And of course, when you combine Sonic 3 with Sonic and Knuckles, you get what the developers originally intended Sonic to be in the first place. For those of you who don't already know, Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles were split up into 2 separate releases because the Sega Corporation's philosophy of striving for goodness meant rushing games out and trying to cash in as quickly and often as possible. Regardless of the bullshit though, if you're okay with the fact that you had to buy 2 separate games just to play the complete Sonic the Hedgehog 3, then you're gonna get the ultimate classic 2D Sonic experience. And even though Sonic and Knuckles is also compatible with Sonic 2 to unlock Knuckles as a playable character, the levels in Sonic 2 aren't really made with the Red Echidna in mind, whereas the stages in the full version of Sonic 3 are specifically tailored for Knuckles. At least in the second half of the game anyway, cause unfortunately, some of Knuckles' Sonic 3 stages feel rushed, like both acts of the Carnival Night Zone only taking about 3 minutes to complete without even having a boss. Honestly, Knuckles in Sonic 3 levels are just frustrating in general since he can't jump as high and gliding can only do so much for you. While I'm complaining about Sonic 3 and Knuckles though, which let's just call Sonic 3 from this point forward, Sonic 2 does have a few nice things that were lost for some reason, with the main thing being the sprite designs that were overcomplicated in Sonic 3 and just don't look as good as they did in the second game. And also, why the frig does the Super Sonic theme suck in 3? Just listen to how it sounds in 2. Pretty boss, huh? Now listen to the supersonic theme in Sonic 3.
Disappointed!
Supersonic's theme in 3 without the Knuckles cartridge is just the invincibility theme looped over and over again. And with the Knuckles cartridge, it's just a remix version of the title music from Sonic & Knuckles, which isn't even as good as the title theme from just Sonic 3. If there was no time to make new transformation music due to sake of rushing the developers, or Michael Jackson backed out or was fired, then they should have just recycled Supersonic's theme from the second game. But even though the Super music in 2's better, 3 at least improved the overall mechanics of the transformations by allowing it to be an actual choice. But the main reason why Sonic 3 is much better than 2 is because it's just way less frustrating. Even though the third game has its fair share of frustrations as well, especially if you're playing as Knuckles. There's plenty of instances where you either run into enemies you didn't have time to prepare for, or springs that send you flying back that aren't cleverly placed obstacles that are meant to test your wits, but just to piss you off and kill your momentum. I'm sure these things are meant to keep you on your toes, but there's better ways this could have been done, either by making the sprites smaller, or by just keeping your character to the left side of the screen if you're expected to react quickly while running. And this is where I think Sonic Mania really fires the grease up and takes things to the next level. Because first of all, the aspect ratio of an HD game really gives you a lot more time to react to things, and even beyond that, the developers kept all the frustrating bullcrap from the classic Sonic games to a minimum, if not left out entirely. But now that the comparisons between Sonic 3 and Mania have started, I'm only going to compare the core games to each other in the interest of fairness. Because it wouldn't be fair to consider that there's an assload of extra content, better graphics, and an amazing opening animation in the new game. And I'm also not going to consider the price, or the fact that you need 2 separate cartridges just to play the full Sonic 3, because I think that just make things way too easy for Mania. And not only that, but I don't even think Sonic Mania needs all that taken into consideration anyway, because I'm just going to say this right now, that even after letting the honeymoon phase of Sonic Mania pass, and after replaying Sonic 3 and Knuckles as all 3 characters, Sonic Mania is just a way better game. And not only because it was simply able to learn from Sonic 3's mistakes, but because Christian Whitehead's candy ass went the extra mile to fine-tune the game and make sure that every inch of every stage makes sense and doesn't try to frustrate the player while also providing challenge. Sonic 3 has good level design with bonus stages and secrets hidden throughout that encourage exploration for the most part, but then it randomly sullies its britches by doing things like placing invincibility power-ups in places without many dangers immediately after, and with the occasional areas that were consciously designed to serve no purpose, like this part right here. Why even let me climb this wall for damn near a minute if there's nothing there? It could have just as easily been blocked off. Or what about this right here? Given the fact that there's a hazard to overcome means that there must be a reward, what with there being a risk and all. But nope, nothing. And it's not like I'm going backwards in the level either. This room was intentionally put here. I mean, the level designers consciously went out of their way to put spikes here. I'd guess the idea was to make it feel more rewarding when you do find secrets, since after all, things don't always pay off in real life. But this is a video game, and I think stuff like this is just poor design that discourages me from exploring and taking risks. Even just a ring box would have been enough for me to let this slide, but seriously, nothing? The original Metroid had this problem in 1986, but Nintendo must have realized that sending players down challenging paths with no reward isn't fun. I know this is just a small complaint being put under a microscope, since there really aren't too many instances like this, and that it's a Knuckles level in Sonic 3 that I already speculated was rushed. But it's just another example of Sega's mentality of striving for goodness that they've always had. Sega's never been known to go the extra mile and fine-tune their games, which is the main downfall in Sonic 3's battle against Mania. It just feels like Sega was okay with releasing a game that's core experience was good enough to where nobody will hate it. After all, people will always buy the next one as long as it's good enough, which sadly seems to work since Sonic games have always sold well despite there being so many bad games in the series. But if Sega had just strived for greatness instead of goodness, then maybe Sonic would have gotten similar praise to Mario, since quality protects a brand's integrity, even if it doesn't always mean the maximum immediate profit. And the reason why Sega actually allowed Christian Whitehead to perfect Sonic Mania could only be one of two things. Either it was a demand made by Whitehead himself, or Sega didn't really think much of this game in the first place to even bother rushing it. But given the fact that Sonic Mania had a physical release of a digital download, I'd guess that Whitehead just cared about his baby too much to let it have an early birth, and Sega probably complied. Now that Sonic Mania has proven to be a success though, I hope that if it gets a sequel that too will get the extra time and care it deserves rather than being rushed. As great of a game as Sonic Mania is though, and even though it improved upon Sonic 3, there are a few things that could have been done better, like having more original levels. I get that Sonic Mania is supposed to be nostalgic and all that, but how many times do we need to replay the Green Hill Zone? It's not even that great of a stage, and dare I say the music's not even that good either. It's just what everybody remembers the most, since the majority of people who played Sonic 1 in the 90s either couldn't get past the first level, or just got bored after completing it, seeing as how the second stage, Marble Zone, really slowed the game down considerably. But even though Sonic Mania does have classic memorable stages, it does have original levels as well. I just wish there were a few more instead of so many remakes is all. You can't fault the past games too much for their imperfections in this battle, since Sonic Mania had the advantage of only having to worry about the technical aspects of reworking these levels, as opposed to spending time and resources on imagination. And even though I said Marble Zone slowed Sonic 1 down considerably, I don't necessarily hate slower gameplay in moderation for Sonic games. But seeing as how speed is what Sonic advertises, the average player just wants to run fast. Hence why Green Hill Zone and the majority of Sonic 2 are what people most fondly remember about the classic Sonic series. But despite casual Sonic fans hating anything about these games that doesn't involve you running fast, I personally think 2D Sonic Sonic games are at their best when completing solid platforming sections is rewarded with speed, which I'd imagine is hard to find the perfect balance for if you're a developer. Both Sonic 3 and Sonic Mania have outstanding soundtracks, and even though Sonic Mania just recycles old music since Sega insisted on relying so heavily on nostalgia, the tunes were completely remade to keep things fresh enough to where I honestly can't even say that Sonic 3 is the better music, despite being an all-original soundtrack and having some of Michael Jackson's touches remain in the game. However, despite most of my critiques of Sonic 3 being smaller than my mom's pee-pee, the fact that they're so small is almost worse in my opinion, since I honestly believe that if Sonic 3 took the extra time to fine-tune the experience by fixing things like the last few levels of Sonic 3 feeling cheap instead of challenging, to those incredibly slow pump things in the mushroom levels that just aren't fun, requiring 2 separate cartridges, to Bo being a part of the sound team and Tails' plain sprite just being mirrored in the credits with Sonic's name being backwards is just disappointing. Because things like these being in the final game either says that the developers see this as a job rather than something they're passionate about, or Sega just doesn't see the importance of maximum quality, with the latter obviously being the case as it is with most Sonic games besides Mania of course, which is why in my opinion, it's not only the greatest 2D Sonic game ever made, but the greatest period. Which didn't have to be the case, since Sonic 3 could have been even better than Sonic Mania seeing as how it's completely original and didn't rely on older games for inspiration. Even though I think Sonic Mania could have just as easily been a completely new game with all original stages had it not been for Sega wanting nostalgia. The main reason why I think Sonic Mania is clearly better though is mostly due to Christian Whitehead's team just trying harder, more so than having a guideline of mistakes not to make from 20 years ago, which is a luxury we all know Sonic 3's team didn't have. And it's impressive that game accomplished as much as it did, and I thoroughly enjoyed replaying Sonic 3 and Knuckles again, but the fact remains that Sonic Mania is the best 2D Sonic game of all time, even without the DLC. And then when you add the DLC on top of it with Sonic Mania Plus, it adds an extra level, characters, bonus stages, improved co-op modes, among other features, plus the unfair advantages it already had over Sonic 3 in its initial release, like having a higher quantity and quality of Blue Sphere stages with better graphics, options, the best features and sprites from all 4 classic Sonic games, and much more, all without having to combine 2 separate cartridges. And not to mention all the small things like giving Sonic the ability to spin dash immediately after jumping to speed the game up a little more, and actually giving Super Sonic's transformations proper theme music really drives the wedge into Sonic 3's booty hole even further. Even though I will say the boss battles in Sonic 3 are just as good as Mania's in case you thought I was doo-dooing on Sonic 3 too hard. What do you think though? Is Sonic Mania Plus the greatest 2D Sonic game ever made? Or do you think I'm a silly buttwagon who doesn't appreciate the classics? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and as always, I'll pin whatever I find most entertaining. Don't forget to like and share this video if you want to help this channel grow. Thanks to everybody who supports us on Patreon. And if you're a sexy beast of above average intelligence and merit, then go ahead and press the subscribe button if you haven't already. My name's Cameron, and I'll see you next time.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty, thank you for your support.